Welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show where we treat the final edit of the movie like the script. I'm one of your hosts, Bob Rose, at Thundergrunt Bob on all relevant social media. And right now, Jamie is going to introduce himself.
I sort of always predict who you're gonna say in my head. I don't know why, but there's somehow
I don't even know
that
who I'm going to say. I just sort of last second go, which J am I going with?
you were very enthusiastic with that. For some reason, whenever you say that, I think of Kevin Smith. It just feels like something he would say at the beginning of, like, I don't know why.
I'll take it. Sure.
I can see Kevin Smith being like, "Welcome to blah 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 blah."
I
That's
think he
kind of how
does
he
that
talks.
on his podcast. So
Yeah, he kind of does some kind of enthusiastic announcer style voice, as opposed to me. If I did it, I just, yeah, we're back. Kind of. So anyway, I'm Jamie Nash. I am the writer of Save the Cat Writes for TV and the Save the Cat Beat Sheet Workbook. I'm also a screenwriter, and now I'm going to pass it on to Jimmy.
I am Jimmy George. I'm going to add something to my repertoire because some people have told me that I should. I am a screenwriter, script consultant, and also producer of 7 feature films. It is relevant, I guess, but people have been like, why don't you ever say that you're a movie producer on the show? I'm like, I guess I should mention it. So yeah, and my Twitter handle is at Jimmy R. George.
all right. And you should mention it too. I guess I should mention stuff. I don't know. Introducing ourselves is like one of those things we do.
I feel like this,
I don't want to do
it. It feels like a goddamn Twitter bio.
I'd rather, I'd rather people just look at our Twitter bios and just go there and you can see what we do.
I more feel like it's a sales pitch. Like, you can hire me as a screenwriter, you can buy my books, but any other thing I might list in my bio, like if I said I was a film producer, nobody's going to hire me to be a film producer.
Same.
So that's why I leave that out. It's like,
maybe I'll nix it.
Yeah. But no, I mean,
Jamie, you're an old vintage comic book salesman. That's what you are.
There
that's
it
right.
is.
That's right. And comic book salesman. Yeah.
And speaking of comic books, last episode we did Deadpool, the first Deadpool, and this episode we're doing Logan because of the $1 billion making Marvel that is Deadpool and Wolverine. So that's how we're responding to the trending. So we're going to talk about 2017's Logan, but before we get into our discussion topics, we're going to go around and just say a small little blurb about our thoughts, our relationship with this movie, and what have you. Let's start with Jimmy this time.
I don't have much reverence for X-Men or the comics. I wasn't a comics reader in the 90s. I definitely watched the Fox cartoon, and that was the Wolverine that I knew. So I mean, I can appreciate following this version of Logan through all the films and how this puts that to a close. And I love the movie. Every time I watch it, I feel like the rewatch value is so high. I feel like I notice, especially doing it for this episode, notice so many things I didn't notice before. And I love the Marco Beltrami score. It's so good. I love the film. I don't know what else to say.
Okay. Jamie.
Yeah, I my Wolverine, I do have copies of Wolverine, the Frank Miller miniseries. If anybody wants to buy them, I do have all those issues from the 80s.
Are they boarded? Are they bagged and boarded?
They are boarded. I never get anything rated, but I do have. If you want the Wolverine series, the Frank Miller series, I do have those. So that's the most important thing in the garage. It's the funny thing is they're probably the only X-Men or they're probably the only Wolverine comics I have, because I came to the X-Men much later, like in the 80s, and it wasn't even like my big comic by then, because the X-Men weren't super popular in the 80s in some ways. Wolverine took off after the Frank Miller stuff, but and then they had their resurgence in like with the movies, of course, but also the cartoon and stuff like that. This movie, I I enjoyed this movie. I thought it was really good, and especially after we got a few X-Men movies. That's about all I have for it. Nothing crazy. I mean, I like this movie. I mean, that's it. It's not like it was
Jesus, guys.
Okay, wait. I'm gonna push back on this, okay? Because I feel like there was a time where you were speaking about this to us as if it was like almost belonging on your 10 list of movies that you were gonna put like we must.
I don't remember
cover
that.
during the-
but
I feel like you were telling me at some point it was like the comic book movie that like sort of took comic book movies to another level.
I don't know.
Am I putting words in your mouth? I guess I am.
Yeah, I do really like this movie. I do think this movie is more my taste than superhero movies. But
why is that funny? You didn't say anything funny. It's just funny. I don't know.
It really is. Like is it in my top 20 since the millennium or anything? I don't know. I doubt it. It might be in my top 50 or something.
I must be misremembering.
I'll say this: whenever Jamie says he like really loves something, it's memorable.
That's what I'm saying.
Don't say
Rob
it
and I go,
often.
okay, well, we're definitely going to do
Yeah, we're like, oh, Jamie's excited about something. Let's do that then.
I mean, I would not put it past me that I had said that, and now I've kind of forgotten or changed my mind or something. But I don't think this one would be the one. I'm making it sound like I don't like this movie or something, but I really like this movie.
That's what I was trying to say. That's what you do.
I really do like this movie, but like I said, it might be in my top 50 of the last 25 years or something, but it's probably not my like top 10. It's not.
You mean of all movies, not comic book movies? You mean like all movies?
Of the last, I should say 25 years. We'll say since 2000.
Okay.
Like most people,
it did get nominated for an Oscar for writing.
It did.
So
and I really, that's again, I should underscore. I really like the fact that it did take it to the new level. It wasn't R-rated because this was before Deadpool, right? This was pre-Deadpool.
Yes.
So to me, this is like one of the first gear shifts. Like, we've had like all these kind of fun, movies, and then this one kind of shifted gears to that, hard R kind of action movie and stuff, and kind of bleak prospects and stuff like that. And I love bleak and I love all that stuff. So the other thing I'll say about this one is the Dark Knight Returns is like one of my favorite things in the 80s. Again, Frank Miller. Again, I have copies if you want it. And it really, so the 80s, that book really reignited or ignited my passion for comic books in some ways. And I love stories about like kind of the bleak takes of what the heroes ended up being like 20 years later or something like that. It's one of my favorite types. Yeah, Unforgiven.
This movie is Unforgiven.
And for that reason, maybe that's why I said what I said to Jimmy, because I do love stories like that, and I love this story for that reason. Like that's my favorite part of this movie. So,
gotcha. I'm not gonna say too much, but I'll say this, like kind of what we forced Jamie into talking about. I think that my weirdest thing I'd like to say, since we're doing Deadpool and Wolverine, is that in the weirdest of ways, I think Logan and the first Deadpool movie were already heavily linked. Now that they're like, a $1 billion movie, they're already heavily linked because they both were like that seismic vibe shift in the entire comic book era, right? Like Deadpool, like openly clowned on the whole genre, while this has lots of metatextual commentary in it with the actual comic books, things that, stuff that Logan says, some of it happened, like a third of it happened, and all that. But this is like also very metatextual in how it changed everything too, and how it commented on what came before. And those two movies to me like signify a moment in time where everything did seem to change. And then what we had from this, Endgame was 3 years later. This was like the beginning of the end of the golden age of comic book movies. Logan is the beginning of the end of the golden age. And I'm including, I'm obviously including the Marvel Cinematic Universe, DC, everything in that. And Logan was kind of the signifier. Deadpool was like the second hit on the nail. And then, here we are. And then everything since Endgame, as we have discussed on this podcast hasn't always felt right. Because we, you know what I mean? After Deadpool and Logan, it's like, we did it, right?
It's what was really interesting in watching this was after watching many seasons of The Boys. And of course, that character, the main character in that, or I guess he's the main character, is kind of based on Wolverine. And he's a broken guy, and he's sick, and he's coughing, and he's, he stabs himself with some juice to give himself an extra boost. There was a lot of things that were very similar to that.
But you mean Billy Butcher?
Billy Butcher.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's really all I obviously I love this movie. I saw it many times in the theater. I saw even Logan Noir at the Alamo Draft House. That was great. And since we're probably never doing another X-Men movie, I just want to say I've spent now 20 years of my life absolutely detesting Bryan Singer's X-Men movies. I wrote about how much I hated X2. I hated X2 day one. I hated X-Men day one. I wrote in my college newspaper how much I loathed X2. And it wasn't because of the comics, because I don't even like the X-Men. But I like their stuff, but I can like a good movie. You know what I mean? And I think if I did my top 5 of Fox X-Men movies, there's only one Bryan Singer X-Men movie in that top 5, and that's just because I ran out of movies that you know what I mean? It's like Deadpool 2, Deadpool, Logan, and then First Class, and then I guess I'm forced to put Days of Future Past in there. But like the franchise this is commenting on, I have hated pretty much uniformly since it came to us. I hate the first X-Men movie. It's awful. In my opinion, it's a terrible movie. So our listeners can get mad at me about that and everything. Everyone has their own opinions on that, but I've thought I love Wolverine as a character, and I actually love the second Wolverine movie and this movie too. But when it comes to the X-Men movies and this franchise, oh man. And Mangold has said this is part of that franchise. A lot of people debate that if Logan is part, this is the Wolverine that was in those movies. That has been a debate back and forth, if you didn't know. So yeah, I'm just saying I'm coming in. I came into Logan when it came out as someone who detested this franchise mostly. So
it won you over then.
Well, it won me over, but my top 3 Fox X-Men movies are Deadpool 2, Deadpool, Logan. I obviously don't like it's like the 3 movies that are commenting on the other movies. So anyway, that's my short stuff. Jamie, who wrote this shit?
Wow, you went right to it. I was looking at the box office, so I'll give you the box office first.
Well, okay, yeah.
I don't know. What do we do first? Don't we usually
well,
do
we
box
do
office? I don't know.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, I don't
box
know.
offices.
I'm staring
We're getting
at
rusty here. We're falling apart.
I felt like that was the first thing, but maybe I'm wrong. So the box office was $619 million worldwide. I think it was based off like $100 to $150 million budget. So probably about, it's $97 million budget. It says
only 97.
Only 97.
It was crisp 97.
It's practically an independent film at that level.
Right.
Okay, so in an R-rated movie, it was probably set records at the time when it came out for R-rated superhero movie.
And then Deadpool R-rated also set records.
Yeah.
They both have they always had this union of that kind of stuff.
Yes. So this was written by 3 people, 3 writers extraordinaire. Let's see, U-Bowl. No, I got it wrong. Whatever the good old U. Is that his name? U? I don't know how you pronounce it.
Uwe is how you say
Uwe.
it.
Is it really?
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
That sounds
That's
like
one reason he's so angry, man.
Yeah, he's so mad about it. I think I could be wrong, but I remember
everybody's mispronouncing his name.
Like if I made it up, that's how I'd say it. I'd say Uwe. Oh, okay. I don't know. So James Mangold, Scott Frank, and Michael Green. James Mangold came onto the scene in animation, I believe, right? I'm clicking on his IMDb to kind of verify that. I think he came through the Disney world, not Disney World, but Disney circles. Let's see. Let me just dig this up. Oh yeah, yes, The Magical World of Disney was his first credit.
Hell yeah.
And then he did Oliver and Company. That's the one I was trying to think of. He did
That
a
was big in my
claymation.
childhood.
Me too.
Oliver and Company was huge.
He did a claymation Easter or something. And then if I'm remembering correctly, like after he started in animation, then he went to film school and kind of reinvented himself.
Whoa.
And he reinvented himself with the first big one that I think of is Copland, because that was kind of the one he jumped on. It's something else called Heavy. Do you guys remember Heavy?
I've never seen Heavy's kind of the the odd man out in this one for me.
So-
I've seen all the others, but
So Copland, Girl Interrupted, Kate and Leopold, Walk the Line, and then Logan. And then after that, he did Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Didn't he
So-
do Identity? Yeah, I got that wrong.
did he direct it or did
Maybe
he
he
write it?
directed.
Maybe he just
Yeah.
wrote it.
He did
I am-
direct. He directed Identity. Yeah,
Love Identity.
I
He
am
did
just
not write it though.
Oh, okay.
Interestingly enough, he also did Night and Day. He did 310 to Yuma, directing wise. So he did a bunch of other stuff as
Man,
well.
he's done enough.
He
And
also,
some.
I think the
Word
weird thing
versus
about
Perot.
Logan is that this is his second
Producer.
Wolverine movie. A lot of people don't remember that.
Yeah.
Like I really like. I always note that the people are like, "Oh, really? He directed the other one?"
Yeah, wow.
Yeah,
Yep.
he did 2 Wolverine movies.
Yeah. That is kind of surprising because you'd
Yeah.
think they'd be completely different directors doing the two of those movies. Michael Green, he has a very cool kind of career going on. He did, so just to go back, I mean, he goes way back to Green Lantern, even before that, Smallville, Snoops, Sex in the City, he wrote on lots of TV shows. But around the time of Logan, he did, Logan was his first thing after Green Lantern. Alien Covenant, Blade Runner 2049, Murder on the Orient Express. I remember when he kind of came on the scene, he was like involved in all these really prestige, high level movies all of a sudden. And some of them had dubious, like, I don't know how well Murder on the Orient Express did. That did pretty well. But then he had like Jungle Cruise. He worked on the American Gods TV series. He did the Death on the Nile screenplay. And Blue Eye Samurai is also, he was the creator of that, or created by credit of Blue Eye Samurai for the US Netflix stuff. So pretty impressive stuff. Like I remember when he kind of showed up and I was like, not that he'd been around for a while, but he just seemed like he was getting all the cool projects. Not too much unlike the next person I'm about to mention, who is, as I click
Scott
on
Frank.
his, Scott Frank.
Yeah.
And Scott Frank was kind of one of those people maybe 20 years ago that had every cool credit sort of belonged to Scott Frank at a certain time. So some of the things Scott Frank has done, and Scott Frank's kind of reinvented himself as well recently, I think. But if you go back, everything from a movie I love, not many people have seen, that Jimmy mentioned earlier, Dead Again. I love that movie. I think it's great. He did Little Man Tate back in the day.
Gosh,
Oh,
that's
man.
back.
He did Malice. He did, and then this is when I think he really
90s
started.
thrillers.
Yeah,
Yeah, and this is when I think he shifted. His career kind of started to go up a notch. He did Get Shorty. He did Birdland. He did Out of Sight, and then he
That's-
did
that's
Minority Report. Minority Report, the Karen Cisco TV show. I'll just kind of skip through here a little bit. Marley
Oh.
and Me,
he also wrote The Wolverine.
the Wolverine.
Okay, so this
Yeah.
team worked
This
together
team worked
before.
on. Yeah,
Yep. The Wolverine, Logan, and then recently, and this is when I say kind of started to change, like around the time of Logan, he also did Godless, which was a Western on, I think, Netflix as well. And that was based on a feature he had, and he turned it into a TV show. But then he did The Queen's Gambit, which also shifted him into kind of different territory, as well as kind of this prestige TV guy or kind of Emmy-winning TV guy.
Mm-hmm.
So those are our very esteemed writing team for Logan.
And I will say it's not on the talking points, but if you're out there, Logan Script, the script for Logan is very easy to find. And I think it's a really instructive example. Like, it does a lot of modern stuff. It's got bold scene headings.
Yeah,
What?
doesn't it famously have the thing where it says, like, in the actual script it said, like, this is a movie where people will die? Like,
there's a big
like
long opening
thing. Yeah.
italics that's directly to the reader. That's like, this is how the fight scenes are gonna feel. This is it's very it fills up like half a page. Yeah.
It's
But
good stuff.
I love the way it reads. I think it's really instructive. I think you can learn a lot from the visible ink on the page. So if you're out
And
there,
it's free, right?
free, easy to find. Just say type in Logan PDF, Logan Script
Gotcha.
PDF. Yep.
Okay. Do you guys want to get into the setup in action?
Yeah. And my big question about the script, does it have the word snicked in it?
I gotta imagine it does.
I bet it does. I bet that's popular.
There's actually a lot of really geeky Easter eggs in this movie, but they're done so they're
Subtle.
so well crafted and put in there with such care. It's like you wouldn't know.
Oh, I'm looking at the script now. On page 2, it has the word snicked. There you go.
There you go.
I call
It has a lot of we see, guys. Bolded scene headings, we see, but it's very good.
We move over the back bench. That's what the first thing I'm reading here. So I did want to mention the opening of this. I really love the opening of this movie. I think it's a great fight scene. It does so much that, you know, it would be very easy to write an action scene in the beginning and not set up all these different things it's setting up. But this one sets up character, it sets up setting, it sets up tone, and it kind of is, it is doing that thing that you mentioned that happens on page, let me see if I can find it in the script as I look at it. Page 2. Page 2, it has this big thing in italics. Now might be a good time to talk about fights described in the next 100 or so pages. Basically, if you're on the make for a hyper choreographed, gravity defying, city block destroying CGI fuckathon, this ain't your movie. And then it goes on and on. And that's kind of what the opening does. So it's interesting that they put that in, but it really is the spirit or the soul of this opening scene is to say, this isn't your other action movies. This is something different. And
if this was a Deadpool movie, it'd be like, are you ready to see me use my claws? Like for the first time in like 20 years, like we finally got there.
He'd probably call timeout and walk toward the screen for a second or something.
But that's what the scene is doing.
Yeah, exactly. So what I love about this scene, so it starts out with him like drunk in the back of the limo. He hears so immediately it's setting Wolverine like drunk in the back of a limo. You know, and he gets out and is like, even does a thing where he adjusts his legs like they're stiff and he's been in there for a long time. And it hints that he doesn't go right into killing the guys. You know, he's like, hey guys, you don't want to do this. And the guys just kind of completely disrespect him and ultimately shoot him. So this action scene that then kicks off where he gets kind of brutal with them. It says a lot about
kinda.
Yeah. I mean,
really kinda.
I mean, he's stabbing his claws straight through their skulls and throwing them through the air. And it does so much to set the tone of this movie, but also it sets his tone because he really just doesn't want to be bothered with life or these guys. You know, he's drinking in the back of his car. It's setting up his character as somebody that's kind of broken and given up. And then really he gets pissed off not when they shoot him, not when they do all this. It's when they shoot the car. And it's
the car can't heal.
Yeah, the car can't heal, and it kind of gives you this feel like, oh, Wolverine has to answer to some shitty boss or something like that. Like we never get to see that shitty boss, which would have been kind of fun, to be honest. But
I think what this also does well is it's this whole scene, what you just described. Even just opening the shot on him opening of him waking up, it's Logan becoming everything we thought he would have been in the worst scenario of watching all the other movies, right? lonely, broken, tired, doesn't want to be here, has nothing. He's
Yeah.
answering to other people that he hates. Like,
Right.
he's everything we thought he would be. No surprises.
Right. And then it's also doing a thing where it does, even though we all know who Wolverine is for the most part, it is resetting. It shows all his powers,
Right.
right? It in 2 seconds it shows, that he can, well, 2 minutes. It shows he can regenerate, that he can pop bullets out, that he has claws, that he, strength and all that stuff.
And
It
also,
also,
it's not working, right?
and it also it's not working. That he's a little vulnerable. That
Yeah.
he's not quite the super powered person we've seen in the past movies. And then lastly, this little scene, this quick scene that's it's honestly one of my favorite scenes in the movie in some ways, because it's just that if I have one criticism of this movie, is that the fights can kind of get redundant by the end of the movie. By the time I'm in the woods, the fights can kind of start seeming a little similar. But here, when I first saw this fight scene, I was like, it's the first one, so it's like out of the gate, I'm just like, they're stabbing people in the face now, so it's pretty
Yes.
intense.
If I had one criticism, is who edited that cell phone video?
Yeah, that's great. So the other thing is that it kind of shows this kind of dystopian future a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit crime out of control, that these people will literally just try to rob a car that somebody's sleeping in. They'll shoot the person just right there without any thought. But also they kind of have this funky LCD billboard and stuff like that. So it just kind of sets the stage that this is some kind of slightly dystopian future that we're in as well.
We don't have rooting influencers on here, but I noticed while watching too, like, you had to have the car thieves shoot him,
Yeah.
or else
Yep.
that fight scene would be atrocious to character, right? Him chopping them up without that shot would be terrible.
He gives
They're
them
murderers.
and actually I think that's part of his character. He gives them 2 or 3 outs.
Yeah, he does. He tries to stop
like
it.
literally says, "Guys, you don't want to do this." Then he kind of explains they're chrome, the hubcaps are chrome, and they won't be able to get them off. And he really tries to help them out before they shoot him. He doesn't come out and say, "I'm going to kill you if you don't stop." He's more like, "Hey guys, I know what you're doing. I get it." But
and if they didn't shoot him, the claws would have never come out. He would have just yelled at him
Right.
and stuff. Yeah.
Right. But I think it's a great scene. Just
It really
it
is.
shows all the things you can do if you can sneak in, and none of these things are heavy-handed. They're all exposition, but instead of panning over a wall of photos, or one of my favorite things, or something, it just shows you how you can incorporate all this exposition without saying, "You look sick, Wolverine," or something. You could show all these different things in a cool action scene.
You know what though? I'll say this. It does pan down to Wolverine in the very first shot, and it's like him having to rise up again after
Yeah.
being down for so long. So I know it's not panning across photos, but as far as a directing standpoint, that little pan for him rising up into frame, like, oh, I got to get up again and do, that's a metaphor for the whole movie, right?
No, and it does have its pan across photos, like in the montage, like he looks at his little boat. He looks at his little boat or something. Like, I still never understood. This is not on our talking points. Who are those USA guys? Who are those guys? Like the guys that are like, are they just
chanting USA?
Yeah,
maybe there was some stuff that got cut. Yeah,
that they were just like kids that he was carting around.
That's what I assume, but then they drive past this heavy police presence, and I'm always like, what is this, just to show that the world is kind of backward?
That was world building. It was the dystopian, like, border immigration commentary of what's happening.
Okay. I always like try to connect the two. Like, I'm like, I guess they're just shouting USA to mock the people.
They're white bro jocks going to prom who are all assholes screaming at immigrants trying to get into America.
Okay.
That's all. And he's having to cart around these awful people that he obviously hates.
Right. Okay. That's
so how bad people. Yeah.
That's how I interpreted it. But then this time, for some reason, with the heavy police presence, I wasn't sure if they were somebody else, and I was like, I don't know what's going on here.
No, I think it's just he's having to be subservient to awful people that
Right.
don't appreciate his kind nor anything he's done.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So that's
Yep.
all it is.
Yep. More rooting resume material.
Yeah, it's
To
checking
be
that
frank.
box that Jamie has, the Rodney Dangerfield, to get no respect.
Get no
big
respect.
time.
Get no respect. I mean, he has the boat.
Wolverine-
Logan is
totally-
a big time Rodney
he could've
Dangerfield
totally-
in that opening.
Dangerfield, man.
Right. I mean, it checks a whole bunch of rooting resume things because then he looks at the boat. He has a dream. All this kind of stuff.
They
There's
try
just so
very
many
hard to make their lives better.
Let's do back to
Yeah.
school at some point. That kind
But
of
anyway,
goes right
that's it.
into the next topic, which is reluctant hero catalyst debate, wrong reasons to do the right thing, right?
Yeah. So the one thing I wanted to mention about this in particular, it reminded me when I was watching, I was like, oh, it's kind of the same plot as Mad Max Fury Road in some ways. There's a lot of similarities.
Another movie released in black and white in theaters.
Interesting. I didn't think that was what I meant. It was just that this was
just
released
that they
in
were in both in black and white.
But similar engine to the story. You have a reluctant hero, and the big thing about a reluctant hero is he's a hero that gets roped into doing the mission. Unlike like Dude with the Problem stories or Monster Now stories, where people are just battling for survival. It's not even that they get roped into being on a mission. In both of those movies, the hero is kind of roped into being on the mission, but not for heroic reasons at all. They're purely for their own reasons. And this movie does a really good job of that. So he ends up, transporting Lauren. He's going to transport her to wherever they're on the quest. It's the last thing he wants to do. He's kind of broken and tired. He's interested in buying his boat and getting out of town and just dying basically on the boat or something. So what you need to do in a story like this, because the hero is so reluctant to go, you have to give them so many reasons to force them to go. And in this case, I think one of the biggest driver, I mean, for one, he's kind of found out like his hiding place. They know where he is, so to speak. So he really does need to move in that regard. But then Professor X is getting worse and worse and worse. And he knows kind of time is running out in that. So it's almost like this kind of secret time bomb that he has that he needs to act now. So he needs the money, essentially. He needs the money to take the action and things like that. And I think it does a great job of setting up that reluctant hero on a quest. But he's on the quest for the wrong reason. And I think that's the key thing movies like this do.
Cool. Jimmy, did you have anything to add?
No.
Oh, okay.
That was Jamie's topic.
Speaking of Jamie's topics, what about the character construction tool, Tensity?
Well, so it's funny is it's my topic for Jamie to do.
I know, but I was trying to do the segue.
Well, so when I was watching this, the first thing that came to mind was ever since Jamie introduced this tool, which I think was about 5 episodes ago. I don't even remember which episode was it.
Okay.
Do you remember, Jamie?
I don't remember.
It was like 5 episodes ago. You brought it up. And
the episode where he tried to sell a comic book.
Yeah.
Probably.
Take your pick.
Howard the Duck.
Jamie,
Let's do Howard the Duck.
Jamie introduced this, and I've just been distracted by how prevalent it is and how easy it's like I'm just noticing it in every movie I watch when a great character pops off the screen. I can like point to their tensity that Jamie explained. So and the fact that the movie like pointed out tensity in the dialogue that made me. I was like, we got to talk about this. Where Dr. Rice finds out about Xavier's brain issues and says a degenerative brain disease in the world's most dangerous brain. What a combo! I was like, that's Jamie's tensity. So anyway, Jamie, do you kind of want to teach this to us a little bit more? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. This is a concept that comes apparently from marketing that I read about a long time ago. I read about it myself and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool for a lot of different things. And if you read Save the Cat, actually Blake Snyder talks about in log lines. He talks about irony, and it's very similar to how he describes that. Or I think his intent is kind of the same thing as tensity in some ways.
Okay.
So he describes irony as, like, the example he gives is Liar Liar, the movie Liar Liar, and it's a lawyer who can't tell a lie, as opposed to just a dude that can't tell a lie. So it's these two kind of contradicting forces kind of running up against each other, right? It's somebody who always lies, can't tell a lie. So it's two contradictions, it's two opposing forces kind of connected. Beverly Hills Cop, so it's a cop from Detroit that goes to Beverly Hills. That's the thing about Beverly Hills Cop. So obviously Blake's things are all from the 80s and 90s, because he wrote the book a long time ago. So Tensity takes that on in some ways. It's the article I read, and I'm just Googling the article here. It's from a website called, I'll spell it because it's like theoretical. Like it's almost like theater and reticle. I guess it's like theoretical, but
it's a portmanteau.
It's theoretical.com. So theoretical, whatever. So the examples they give are like Marilyn Monroe is somebody that you could describe her in two opposing ways that make up kind of a new thing. And the one they give is seductive innocence. Like that's Marilyn Monroe. They talk about Harry Potter's universe as being magical and mundane and combining to make a new thing, magical and mundane.
Mundane magic, yep.
Yep. Star Wars, they talk about mystical science is kind of the thing. So it's a cross between mystical and science that kind of bring this stuff together.
I love that.
And then they move on to the characters. So Napoleon Dynamite and this is where we wanted to talk about today, because I find this very useful when you're brainstorming your character, because sometimes, and it's funny, like, how there are lists, and we probably did one like last time, like the comedy archetypes. I'm not a fan of the archetypes because they give me one-dimensional characters. It's like the trickster, the mentor, and I always feel like you have to take those and combine it with something to make them interesting. Like, so I never found those very useful for myself, just because the trickster by itself doesn't have this second element.
Like a sincere trickster.
Exactly.
Like
exactly.
That's okay. Yeah. Right.
That's exactly it. Like that's when I realized this tensity thing, then I realized, those archetypes can work for me. I just need a second idea to combine with those archetypes for them to work for me. So the examples it gives, just to kind of give some more cool examples, are audacious underdog, and that's Napoleon Dynamite. Okay.
I feel that. Yes.
Yeah. It's
from
great.
That movie. Yes.
Yeah.
It's almost like I should give you the description and I should say, what famous movie
what
is
character is this? Yeah.
Who would be a clever ditz?
Legally Blonde.
You got it. Legally Blonde.
Oh, really?
Elle Woods.
Yes. We did that movie too, by the way.
Elle Woods is that's great.
Yeah.
So then he goes on to break down, whoever wrote this article, which is a very good article, he breaks down several Star Wars characters. The humble hero, Luke Skywalker. The commanding damsel is Princess Leia. The reliable rogue is Han Solo.
Reliable rogue.
That's so good. That's really good. Yeah.
The reliable rogue is great. It's because it is true. He is very reliable. He's got your back, but he is a rogue. He's this character. The sage warrior is Obi-Wan. Inconsiderate etiquette is C-3PO.
That's right. You brought that up when we talked about this before. Yes.
Okay. And loyal machine is R2D2.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
So more on point to this, he goes into some superhero characters. Fearsome Guardian is Batman. The epic everyman is Superman. And the compassionate
Mm.
warrior is Wonder Woman.
That's great.
All of those
are all
yes.
work perfect. That's really good. We're not just playing, like, we're not faking it right now. I'm actually impressed.
Yeah, I am too.
Passionate warrior. Yes. Wonder
Epic
Woman.
Everyman is like perfect for Superman.
It's perfect.
Yeah,
he kind of nailed the essence of these characters. And then the last one he has is like he has Miss Piggy, Barnyard Diva, so it's things like that.
That's that's great.
Yeah, it's
great.
He does a great job. By the way, mine are nowhere near as good. So
Jamie, what I've been noticing when I watch just movies, since you pointed this out, is just something that never occurred to me. This simple technique, and I'm seeing it in every great character. I'm going, there's like I just told you about Twisters, which I hope we do. I just saw it and I was like, oh my God, he's a daredevil meteorologist. Like the main character. Right. That's why he's interesting. Just that tensity and everything falls into place. Like I'm amazed at how simple this is.
Yeah. He even kind of has them in character arcs in some ways. He talks about them. So like The Professional, he has nurturing killer, for the professional, Leon. In Jaws, he has aquaphobic shark hunter.
Yeah.
So in Casablanca, cynical sentimentalist. And in Iron Giant, weaponized pacifist. So they're just really good. This article goes on. This is a big article. I highly recommend it. Again, it's theoretical.com. But if you Google tensity and marketing, you'll find it. It's like the first thing that comes up. So I highly recommend it. I'm a big fan of this article. And anyway, back on to our point with this movie. So now that we have that groundwork set, the question we have is, do the characters from Logan, that's the movie we're talking about, right? Do they add up?
Yep.
So
welcome to the podcast, Jamie.
So here we go. Charles Xavier. Are we doing a play along, or do you want to hear mine?
I want to hear yours.
I want to hear yours because this is your thing. So
Charles Xavier. I listed some of these while I watched because I knew we were doing this, and then I deleted them. So now I'm going to try to do them off the top of my head. So Charles Xavier, I had as like fragile weapon of mass destruction. That's kind of what I had.
I mean, yeah.
It really is it.
Yeah.
Logan, I had as broken warrior. That's what I had.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Laura, I had as innocent weapon.
That works, yeah.
Caliban, I had as delicate protector. I don't know.
How about delicate hunter?
For me,
I guess not in this movie, but
for me, the tensity there, I didn't have words to put it in, but what it was he is a tracker who can't go outside.
Oh, that's interesting.
That combo is like really like that's complex.
Like agoraphobic tracker.
He's like, but the sun will melt his skin if he's tracking. So that's fascinating. That's like a great combo.
Closeted tracker. I don't know what the word would be. Shut in tracker. I don't know. I love that. That's great. So Dr. Rice, I had as rational monster.
Yep, that works.
And then X-24 was the one I said was the hardest to come up with.
Yeah.
And I came up with engineered chaos because he's kind of like
that's great.
That does work. Yeah, it really works.
Yeah.
Yep.
There was something for me that struck me on a different wavelength, which was his he's like a newborn monster. Like I don't know. He's got the body of Logan,
whatever you would give Frankenstein.
Yes.
Whatever you would say about Frankenstein, you could say about X-24.
That combo. I couldn't put words to it because I'm still trying to wrap my head around this concept, but I love it.
It's funny. I had a similar concept to this, That's a little different, but similar if if it helps. So my idea was that when you're outlining and you're coming up with characters and you come up with, oh, he's the scientist, start thinking of how you can have tensity in your characters. So maybe you're like, they're the evil scientist. Well, could they be the rational monster or something?
Right.
How can you come up? But the one other similar exercise that I used to do or tell people to do was this meets this. So, Charles Xavier would be, fragile power. If you think of a fragile character and you think of a super powered weapon, like Carrie meets, I don't know who's fragile, who would be a sickly movie character or something, but it's something like that. So I used the this meets this level of.
Could you also say for Charles, it's like mindful and fading?
Yeah,
I mean, all of that
like
is there, yeah.
Like he's the one that's most mindful of Logan's predicament, but also he's the one whose mind is leaving him.
Yeah,
and that
sure.
feels like a tensity there too. Like
Sure,
the mind
sure.
that's telling, it's kind of the conscious of Logan is also completely going away.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, he's the most brilliant, but also he's slowly losing his faculties.
Right.
Yeah, right.
I think all this
A character can have several tensities, right?
Yeah, but as far as a brainstorming tool, I think this, like, coming up with the one distinct is like really good.
Yeah, I think it starts losing its value the more words you put around it too.
That's what I'm circling around. Exactly.
Yeah.
As I put more words to it.
Right.
Theme is a little like this too. Like when I come up with themes, sometimes I have to start out with like a big paragraph and I can't really narrow down like the 3-word sentence, or you know what I mean? Like it starts out, I have to talk it through before. So sometimes the hardest part is narrowing it down. And I think that's why we were so impressed with the ones I was reading off the website, is because they really boiled it down to like an essence. And it was like
2 words.
It's perfect. Yeah, 2 words. That's perfect. Yeah.
So I think it's a great instructive tool when you're brainstorming. I love this. This is like one of my favorite things we've started coming up with for the last like couple episodes.
Would Deadpool be a sincere trickster?
Maybe.
Could be.
Maybe.
Right?
He is sincere.
And he is a trickster, right? So
yeah.
Okay. Filling the whiteboard. We've talked about whiteboards so much on this podcast.
Yeah.
That's a bingo word almost, right?
Yeah, but we have been shying away from it. We haven't been putting it on the
but true.
When we come out with merch, we should come out with a whiteboard.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Just a whiteboard.
Blockbusters whiteboard. Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is mine, and then I'm hoping you guys it'll spark examples from your observations too. So filling this whole show is about the goddamn whiteboard. Doesn't have to be a white if you never listened before, it doesn't have to be a whiteboard. It can be a piece of paper, it could be an app on your phone, whatever it is that you use.
You could carve it into your arm with
generation,
a knife.
This is what we're referring to.
Right.
So the reason that we talk about this a lot is because Jamie and I read amateur scripts a lot. And for me personally, speaking of bingo cards, I read amateur scripts 5 days a week. That is my job. And what I find is that people are often not taking the time to generate a lot of ideas. And when they're generating ideas, they're not putting in the effort to make sure that idea is as specific and unique to what their movie is as possible. And what we've learned is that what makes, over the course of this show, a combo of this show and a combo of me being on like script number 400 something, is what makes a script particularly stand out is this concept of premise delivery, and how everything that we're seeing is as unique and special to the movie as possible. Every movie is a snow globe. How do you like come up with the flakes, right? And so put simply, there's a really easy equation to do this, and that is you take an ordinary person, place, thing, scenario, or trope, and then you add this concept that Jamie, do you want to explain premise paint?
Sure. And premise paint is just kind of the idea of what is the premise, and how does that color the kind of mundane genre tropes or story engine that you have. So, in an example, if you had Ghostbusters or something, like the question might be, what's a car? This is more the recent Ghostbusters. What's a car chase in Ghostbusters look like, or something
Yeah.
like that?
Yep.
And then you would kind of come in and pepper it with whatever, crossing the streams or traps, and New York City and ghosts and all the other stuff, and that
Mhm.
paints it to look different. Like maybe a ghost hijacks a car, maybe the car's a ghost, maybe, how is it different? How is that car chase unique to that particular premise? And that's the paint. That's
Yep.
how you paint it.
Yep.
That's how you get the fresh idea from the ordinary idea. And so what I'm reading a lot is scripts that aren't painting their idea with their own premise. So like they're just not playing enough to get to the right idea. So I thought I'd start high level with the whiteboarding techniques and then get down to the nitty gritty. From a high level, this starts at the concept of premise with a new skin. I'm hitting Jamie up again. Jamie, do you want to explain premise with a new skin?
Premise with the new skin is really just taking something that is, it's kind of the this meets this kind of idea, where you have like an old tried and true premise, like a Western, and you say, what's a Western like with superheroes or something like that, and you basically are reskinning the tropes of a Western, whatever they may be, with the kind of colors and ideas and genre expectations of a superhero kind of story or things
Yeah,
like
we've
that.
done this on the Jaws. We've riffed on this on the Jaws episode, and we riffed on this on the on the Alien episode, because Jaws was pitched to the studio as Alien was pitched to the studio as Jaws in space. Jaws with a new skin, Jaws with a space skin. And then like franchises have done this, right? Friday the 13th with a space skin is Jason X. Hellraiser with a space skin is Hellraiser Bloodline. Leprechaun with a space skin is Leprechaun Force, Leprechaun in Space. And then the same thing, like Alien with, yes, Die Hard on a bus. Die Hard on,
right.
Yeah. So this is a technique that the pros are using and that you should consider if you're just, you're at the whiteboard and you're trying to come up with ideas. So I think that this movie does multiples of that, as we've quoted. Like Bob, you said this, like you talked about Unforgiven, right?
Yeah, this movie is Unforgiven plus Lone Wolf and Cub, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's Lone Wolf and Cub with a new skin, with a
And
Wolverine
Shane,
paint.
for that matter.
and Shane,
Yeah.
which is
And
in
so-
the movie. So yeah,
And so
right.
that's what we mean. I mean, we're confusing terms a little bit here, but it's like they're putting the Wolverine paint on. They're putting the Wolverine paint on Shane. They're putting the Wolverine paint on Lone Wolf and Cub. They're putting the Wolverine paint on Unforgiven and the Western genre in general. And they're using that to generate these ideas that deliver on the promise of what this movie is. And I think that's instructive that they definitely took the time, just at a high level, thinking about these things. And Jamie uses the example of the Batman, all the list of things that the audience will want to see in a Batman movie, and David Goyer did that for Batman Begins. And the same goes for if you're doing a Western, right? You got to make this list. What are all the people, places, things, and scenarios that the audience wants from a Western? Like I flagged a couple,
shootout, a bar fight,
right? Right, which we get. There's this movie. There's this book I've talked about in the past. Spoiler alert: the Badass Book of Movie Plots, and it breaks down like subgenres, and it just has like, it's great for idea generation within subgenres. It's not a screenwriting book, but I use it as a tool and I share it with others as a tool. I'm gonna give a couple examples that they have, like choose your location, the dying farm in the middle of the desert. I mean, we get it, right? The corn farm, we get that delivered. Choose your scenario, the horse chase. I mean, we get that with the cars,
right.
the school marm finds the man in black in a puddle of blood and nurses him back to health. Get that?
Yeah.
The man in black wills his way out of his sickbed and back onto his horse.
It's like,
Get that? Against all odds, the man in black wins his gunfight. Get that? So it's just like these things. They were taking the time to just make this list and then say, okay, what does that look like with Wolverine paint? And now that's giving us these fresh moments that feel unique and special to this Logan story. So to go into a little bit more of the nitty gritty, an ordinary old man with a degenerative brain disease plus Logan premise paint equals Charles Xavier having seizures with the power to freeze and kill others. Everybody knows what it looks like for an old man or an old person in general to be losing their mind. You put the Logan premise paint, it becomes special and unique to this movie. An ordinary little girl riding a horse, by the way, I just noticed the Western element of that. Ordinary little girl riding an electric horse. We know what it looks like for a kid to be riding one of those electric horses. That's ordinary. You put the Logan premise paint, it's Laura getting pissed off and pulling out her claws and almost tearing the horse apart. An ordinary little kid getting caught stealing scenario. We've seen that, right? In movies, we can all recognize that trope, a kid stealing things and then the cashier catching them. What does that look like with Logan paint? It looks like Laura whipping out her claws and Wolverine having to save the cashier from getting torn apart.
Normally a kid would run away. She fights with her claws and tries to kill the guy, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Ordinary care. We've all seen an injured character gets cared for in their sick bed. What does that look like with the Logan premise paint? The kids using their powers to help him. You know, the one kid is blowing her cold breath onto a towel and using it to dot his head. You know, they're using what's special and unique, and that's why it's
this also works for Logan caring for Charles.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's the same thing.
The uniqueness of caring for Charles, being who he is, right?
That exactly.
Yeah.
And then like my favorite one, and this is why I feel like these ideas just pop off, because they're doing this premise delivery exercise, which is, we are all familiar with it, the ordinary wooden cross grave marker trope. We've all seen it. The audience is familiar with it. Well, what does that look like with the Logan premise paint? She turns the cross to its side and it's an X on Wolverine's grave marker. And that is a shot, an image, a thing we could only get in this movie that expresses the movie in one singular image. That's the work that you need to put. If you just keep workshopping these ideas, you can get these in your own movie.
That's like one of those things where it's so simple, and yet I would have never thought of it.
Well, I'm always
impressed by it. I'm always like,
who was high-fiving themselves when they came up with that idea? Because they were like,
it's probably in the comics somewhere.
It probably is.
I was going to say that's something that must have been in the comics.
But somebody thought of it in the comics. There was a writer thinking of it then, so they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I challenge people. I mean, and even like the ordinary map. What does a map look like with the Logan premise paint? It's a comic book, an X-Men comic book with the location of where they're going, right? The coordinates. So it's
that can be also used for theme.
It's doing
right.
I've got that later. It's doing
yeah.
so many things. I mean, it's just like when you're coming up with ideas, like keep trying, like, and asking yourself, is this scenario as specific as possible to what my movie is, right? Is this thing like the cross, like the cross that's turned to an X? Is this thing, conveying what my movie is? Can you look at this thing and immediately understand what this is about? And if you can't, how can you keep tweaking those ideas so that it does do that? So, yeah.
What if Wolverine had a really itchy eye, but he can't put his claws away? What does he do? There you go. It's like that's a comedy scenario for this. The premise paint on a guy can't itch his eye. There you go.
I mean, the movie is full of them. These are just the ones.
Yeah, these are just ones.
Picked. Yeah.
You could probably make a list of like 50 easy.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
And that's why you remember it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys want to talk exposition techniques?
Yeah. So you guys have the PDF ready?
I do have the PDF ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Hold on.
So who's reading what was the plan?
The way
I'll read
Bob
whoever.
said exposition, like that.
Exposition. I should have put that on the top.
I'm glad you realized that, Jamie. I was doing that on purpose.
Yeah, I was like, wow.
Exposition.
Talking about premise specificity.
Right. I was putting the premise paint of our episode on the word exposition.
That's amazing. I totally went over my head because I was pulling up a PDF.
Who am I reading? We're going to read a scene, right?
I think you're going to do Caliban.
Okay.
Jamie can be Logan, and I'll be the narrator.
I'm doing Caliban, even though Jamie looks way more like Caliban than I do.
I can be Caliban if you want. If you want to be like, what things?
You want to read more?
Wait, that's Batman. I don't know. I'm doing it as Batman.
I'll
be Caliban. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah. And then fine. So here's what I thought to mix it up. This scene I think does a great job with exposition through the dialogue, and so I thought we could read it. And it's the scene that stood out to me just from a craft standpoint, because like on the surface it's just two guys talking, right?
Yeah.
But there's so much there. It's shouldering so much. And I was really impressed with it. And so we'll read it and then we'll backtrack and talk about some of the techniques it's using that you can learn from. Okay.
Are you reading stage direction?
Yep. All right. Interior smelting plant kitchen, night. Logan enters, finds Caliban sorting laundry. Logan pours himself a coffee, falls in a chair.
I don't want to fight, but we need to talk about these things. There are things.
What things?
Damn it, I didn't mean to laugh.
Damn it.
Well, would it be considered nagging if I repeated my observation that the dose is too low to suppress the seizures?
He shakes a near empty pill bottle and puts it on the table. Logan examines it.
It's what the guy gave me. I wasn't in a position to make demands.
I almost died this morning. That seizure was
It wasn't even a minute.
It felt a lot longer than a minute. I couldn't breathe. I was in a terrible state. You're less affected, Logan. Please don't give me that look. You know he needs a higher dose, and I know you've got more money squirreled away.
A red light blinks on the loading dock. Logan glares at Caliban as a rumble rises.
That money's to get us out of here.
No, not us. You and him. You're saving up for a bloody Sunseeker. I don't see myself hiding below deck like Nosferatu doing laundry, do you? Folding your underwear, making Charles spotted dick.
Out another window, we see a freight train passes. Caliban crosses with his tea, holding something.
This was in your pocket.
Caliban sniffs a gleaming bullet, sets it down.
Adamantium.
Logan snatches it, looks at Caliban. Don't go here.
If you're thinking of blowing your brains out, please wait till you're out on the high seas. Thanks.
I don't need this right now.
A year ago, you asked me to help you, and God knows I try, but I can't help you. Not really if you don't talk to me. I hear you at night. You aren't sleeping. You don't want to talk about that. Or the booze you're drinking, or the pus you keep wiping away from your knuckles, or the blood I wash from your clothes, or those brand new holes in your chest that haven't healed. And I very much doubt you want to talk about the fact that you can't read the label on the side of that bottle. It's ibuprofen.
Logan stares at the bottle, humiliated. He kicks back his chair, and off Caliban's nervous expression, slaps his cup out of his hands. It shatters.
That was my favorite mug.
Logan crosses to his coat.
Something's happening to you, Logan. On the inside. I can smell it. You're sick.
Logan moves toward the exit, eyes aflame.
You're supposed to be leading us somewhere.
So there you go. So
there it is.
First of all, that was the actual script I cut.
Sorry for the horrible acting.
No. I love it, man. I love it. No, but I wanted to talk about like how much what they're doing here, right? So the first one is those first two lines. I don't want to fight, but we need to talk about these things. And Logan says, "What things?" This brings up Jamie's types of tension, mystery, right? The audience is what thing? So we're instantly hooked. Like, what are they going to talk about? Then Logan says, "It's what the guy gave me. I wasn't in a position to make demands." This is exposition as ammunition. That comes in two forms. It's either someone attacking someone with exposition or defending themselves from an attack through the form of vocalized exposition. So here he's saying, I was, that's what I got,
Right.
There's another great line of exposition as ammunition where Caliban is talking about, hey, like, dude, like, you can withstand these seizures. I can't. Like, what the fuck? That is exposition as ammunition in the form of defense.
It's very important for later, right? Like,
right,
we need to know
they're
Logan's
burying a setup here too. Yeah, it's
yeah.
doing multiple things, which is awesome. You don't even know that we're witnessing a setup for later. That's why it's so good. Logan said that money's to get us out of here. Once again, exposition is ammunition. He's being attacked and he defends himself with words that are in the form of exposition. Then Caliban hits back. No, not for us, for you and him. You're saving up for a bloody Sunseeker. Once again, exposition is an attack. Like, he's attacking Logan, and what he's attacking him with is exposition. And so it doesn't feel like it's like being shoved down our throats, right? And then we get hit with a bunch of jokes, which is great. Caliban says, I don't see myself hiding below deck like Nosferatu, doing laundry, folding your underwear, making Charles Spotted Dick. So we just got served a whole shit ton of exposition, and they bury it with a joke, which we've talked about many times in this show is like the easiest way to like make exposition easy for the audience to swallow. Like in Ghostbusters, that's a big Twinkie. Right.
Yeah.
Another joke is Caliban says, if you're thinking of blowing your brains out, please wait till we're out on the high seas. Like burying that adamantium exposition with a joke. And then my favorite one after that big exposition dump, Logan knocks over the mug and he says, that was my favorite mug. So we get 3 laughs to bury all that exposition show. I just think this is a quick 2-page scene, but it's doing so much, and it's doing all of that through dialogue.
It covers a lot of the mumbo jumbo of their powers in very subtle ways. Like,
I'd love to hear the strategy, the behind the scenes of this. Like,
how do we let the audience know what Caliban is, which is hard, right? Like he's kind of, without like a direct explanation, he's a hard one to understand of what he does, but they do seed it pretty well, so you get an idea of what he does.
So the bad version of this would sound just like so.
It sound like sounding me just saying, "I'm Caliban and I have these powers, and and sunlight hurts me."
It's surprising though how often I read that.
Like, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, you'd be shocked. I was reading a script this week that kind of does that. I mean, it wasn't super powered or anything, but it's kind of like, it was just like basically somebody stating, oh, I don't have a job. Life is so hard, or something.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
And it happens a lot.
So I guess the high level lesson is, look at this scene, study this scene. If you like what we're saying, there's great examples of exposition as ammunition in the form of attack and defense, and we get 3 examples of burying exposition with a joke, all in the same scene. So
very cool. Also, I love that it's Stephen Merchant. Something that nobody talks about with this movie is that Stephen Merchant is an X-Man in like maybe in the best X-Man movie. It's just a weird thing if you're a fan of Stephen Merchant. Let's talk about repetition, which we've talked about a few times. Right?
Like endless times.
Is that a joke? Are you guys making a joke here?
Yes.
He's bearing.
Man, I must not be selling these.
He's so dry. He's so dry.
I'm too dry.
It's great.
Repetition. We've really talked about this a few times.
Okay, so the reason I keep kicking a dead horse here with this topic, and I refuse to not talk about it if it's relevant to the episode, is because when I'm reading scripts from newbies, so I'm reading scripts a lot from people who are on their 2nd script or their 3rd script, they're still figuring it out, right? One of the things they're not doing is this. They're not doing repetition. So the technique we're talking about here is you can use repetition to help the audience track the progress of your characters, their agendas, their relationships, their emotional turmoil, all through repeating scenarios multiple times and then subverting those scenarios to do something different that proves to us things are changing. And that's how we're easily able to, amidst all of the information, really quickly understand our character's emotional state. So it really struck me this time how many fucking uses of repetition there are in this movie. So I'm just gonna go through them. This is a book report. Apologies. But here we go. There's 6 different. I'm gonna bring up 6 different examples, and there's probably more that I missed. Number 1 is a dialogue, and these can come in the form of situational dialogue or a combo. The first one is a dialogue repetition reversal, and that is the line "Beware the light." So this is Caliban and the Reaver guy. I think his name is Pierce, the head of the Reavers. When Pierce says "Beware the light," he burns Caliban's face with sunlight and forces him to track Logan. Like that's his moment of like imprisonment and captured. And then later it's reversed when shit's going down on the farm. Caliban grabs the grenades and he's in the Reaver's truck and he looks at Pierce and he says, "Beware the light," and now he's free and it helps him save Logan instead of track Logan. So it's a very simple 1-2 punch. The next one is dialogue and scenario repetition. Get some rest. Logan puts sick Charles to bed and helps him and says, "Get some rest." And later it's reverse when Laura takes over driving in the middle of the desert and she says to Logan, "Rest." So that shows us how Logan's situation is changing, right? Yeah. Very simple. The funerals. So there's lots of funeral repetition, and then there's a repetition within that repetition. The first is Logan's working as a limo driver at a funeral when Gabriella calls him into action. Then later, Laura and Charles watch a funeral scene from Shane on TV. Then Logan tries to hold a funeral for Charles, but he can't muster any words. And then finally, Laura and the other mutants. It's reversed when Laura and the other mutants hold a funeral for Logan. And then within that, there's a Shane repetition. It's a dialogue repetition within the funeral. Laura hears Shane's words on the TV. And then later it's reversed when Laura repeats those same words at Logan's funeral. There's no living with a killing. There's no going back, right or wrong. It's a brand that sticks. Now run on home to your mother and tell her everything's all right. There's no more guns in the valley. I think what's particularly memorable about that moment is how little she speaks, especially in English. And then almost like as a tribute to him, knowing that he's like an English speaking person, it feels very meaningful, like, and that it was a choice to have her say this. Yeah.
It's the only thing she could say, and it's the only thing she should say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah. Logan waking up scenario. Yeah. Repetition reversal. I didn't track how many times, but it's in the half dozen at least, including, like Jamie said, that's how we meet him, right? He wakes up drunk in the back of a limo. Yeah. Several moments with Logan opening his eyes, right, to be awakened. And then my favorite one is as the movie's getting closer to them reaching their destination and he's sort of growing and changing. Logan wakes up to the blazing sun, all that Sunseeker reference. It sort of feels like meaningful, right? Like he's like, oh my God, because like he's starting to get closer to freedom for her, for them, maybe for him. And then it's go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then he finally gets to sleep forever.
And he dies with his eyes open.
Yeah, he dies with his eyes open.
I think is like really.
He does it like the whole story keeps waking him up and happening to him, when really he kind of does just want to go away. He wants to sleep.
He wants to rest. Yeah.
It's a happy death. It's a sad and a very happy death.
Yes.
He's 197 in this movie. That's his age in this movie, I think.
I think you made me realize how much they do point out all the nightmares that like he can't sleep, right? So like he has the hardest time sleeping. So yeah, he finally gets to rest. The drug injection scenario repetition and reversal, which I didn't notice until this time. Logan on repeated occasion is injecting Charles with drugs to dull his chaotic powers, and then they later reverse it, and Logan injects himself to enhance his chaotic powers. So that's a nice, I mean, that's why it hits harder, because we're feeling this repetition even if we're not recognizing it. So those are 6 examples. The reason I say this is what the pros are doing. This is what pro scripts do. And if you're not doing it, consider finding ways to use it to help your story.
It's good. We do repeat that one a lot.
We do.
But it's there. It's set up and payoff. It's something that's just like the most basic pillar of storytelling, right?
Yeah. You would think people who are learning how to write would have that sort of intuitively in their process, but they don't.
Was it somewhere in the last 2 episodes? I feel like it was Jamie that said, if you don't do anything else, do set up and payoff, which I feel like is also which would be repetition too, right? It's always
it's of the same
ilk, right? Like if you're not going to do anything else, do that at least.
I think repetition is a form of setup payoff.
Yeah.
Specialized. Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of the things we talk about are just forms of setup payoff in some ways,
with a different name.
Yeah. I mean, like
different code.
The not so secret weapon would be an example, in this case, the suicide bullet, it's
I didn't put it on the list, but it is
right there.
But there are a lot of different things,
which is from another movie too. That's from from X-Men Origins, I think.
It's almost like if you were a minimalist screenwriter type, like that didn't want to hear any lessons. Like, there are a lot of people are like, don't give me those screenwriting books. I don't want to hear about it. Yeah.
Whatever.
If you had I want, like the one book they should read should just say, set up, payoff, do it. And that if they read that one, maybe they could figure it out and be okay. But
it's like telling a joke. Set it up, establish, punchline.
Yeah. It's all set up, payoff.
It is.
Right. Like, just do that. Touchtones and twitches. Whose is this?
Yeah, this is mine again. I this is another one that we've done recently, but I took a little bit more time and got a little bit more specific definition, because the last time I was kind of all over the place with it. So we did this most recently on Godzilla -1. So this is a technique that I learned from William Martell, who is an awesome screenwriting teacher who has written many movies, and he's got a series of blue books out there. If you haven't read them, highly recommend them. They're all like specialized. He has several different ones that talk about specific techniques, and this is in one of them. And a touchstone or a twitch are objects the audience are introduced to that help us associate something visual with a character's inner problem or external conflicts. So a touchstone is an object that reminds a character of happy times and reminds the audience what's at stake. So for instance, in a Godzilla -1 that we just did, an example of a touchstone is the adopted girl Akiko's family drawing of Kosa, Noriko, and Noriko. They have he puts that drawing on the cockpit when he's going into the final run, and that's a touchstone to remind him how he's feeling about his family, and it reminds the audience of what's at stake for him, right? Just like the definition said. So a twitch,
it's better than him saying, "Oh, I'm gonna miss my family if I die."
Family, right? The bad version of that is him just driving and flying in the cockpit by himself. I'm gonna miss my
family.
So, a twitch is an object that represents the character's inner conflict and appears whenever they're battling their demons. Every time these objects reappear in the story, they help give the audience like an emotional barometer about how the character is feeling and whether they're feeling better about it or whether they're feeling worse about it. And a lot of times we're using those objects, those touchstones and twitches, specifically and only exclusively, like when we're getting those beats of the character growing, it's usually with the touchstone in the screen. So, like on screen. So, some of these examples of that we've talked about in the past are in the Mitchells versus the Machines. It's the wooden moose, Dad's favorite thing. Bob always loves when I pull out this example. In Black Widow, it's the American Pie tape and the song reminding them when they were pretending to be an American family. There is one. See, the MCU uses these things.
Sure. I almost forgot Black Widow. I don't even remember the movie. So.
Sometimes it's used to specifically to track the inner wound as the character is progressing toward healing. And the example I always use is Top Gun. It's Goose's dog tags, right? He feels guilt about Goose dying. He feels like it's his fault. And then we get this moment every time he's feeling that guilt, he's holding those dog tags. And then before the finale, he throws the dog tags into the ocean, and we get the sense, without anything needing to be said, that he's healing through that guilt. So Logan has 4 examples. That's why I felt like we should talk about it. Really easy to learn from. Again, number 1 is the X-Men comic itself. To your point, Bob, like it's doing so much, so many things. Yeah, it's functioning as a
Those
map.
are specially made for the movie, by the way. If you didn't,
oh wow, yeah. I was wondering. Like, I bet those issues are skyrocketed. Jamie, got any?
No. Those were commissioned to be made to look exactly like they're from that era of the comic books, but they look really authentic. I mean, they
sure do.
Yeah.
Can you buy that comic?
I'm sure you can.
I'm sure you know. Can. Yeah.
I wonder if they stole it.
They probably have to. They had
Jamie's gonna bag and board it and put it in his garage.
Sell it on this podcast.
Yeah.
So it functions. I think it functions as a touchstone for Logan about his happiest times with the X-Men family, and I also think it's a twitch, right? Like reminding him of the bad times and the loss of the X-Men family. That line, you read this in your spare time, you do know this is bullshit, right? A quarter of it happened. And nothing like this. In the real world, people die and no self-promoting asshole in a leotard can stop it. This is just ice cream for bedwetters. So clearly it's conjuring up some emotions for him.
It reminds him what a hero he isn't.
Yeah, but I do think that there's some feeling that there's positive response to it when he's flipping through too.
Yeah.
That might just be in the performance.
He's got to be talking about Cyclops too. I feel like that's who he has to be talking about.
In leotard,
right? It has to be
asshole in a leotard.
It has to be Cyclops. It might not be.
There's probably think pieces on YouTube about
who he's talking about.
Yeah. There's all the suspects.
Yeah,
the comic history with them. Somebody made like $50 of ad revenue just.
Well, I'm just going by the movies.
Yeah,
I feel like Cyclops. It could also be Deadpool. Honestly.
So the next one is Logan's adamantium bullet is his main twitch. I mean, every time that comes on screen, he's wrestling with his demons, and we understand that. And then
that's a franchise touchstone too. It's from the other movies.
I know, I love that.
Just like just like another one you're about to say.
Which one?
Dog tags.
Oh, I didn't even bring up the dog tags.
Oh yeah, the dog tags are from X-Men Origins Wolverine. There's a franchise touchstone, which also uses for a touchstone inside the movie itself.
I missed that one completely.
So no, you didn't miss it. It's just there's a lot of them in there.
The next one is the bloody money envelope with the Eden coordinates.
Yep.
It functions as both a touchstone reminding Laura and Logan of Gabriella and her sacrifices. And it's also a twitch because it's reminding them. I feel like every time they're holding it, they're reminded of like all the suffering they experienced that they're seeking to, no longer have by going to Eden. So that's another one. Jamie's favorite, Laura's family photo.
Favorite.
That she pulls out.
Does she have any trophies?
She doesn't, but she pulls out this very unique premise-specific photo of her and her found family in the facility. And that definitely functions as Laura's touchstone and reminds the audience of the stakes for getting to Eden. So every time we see that photo, we know those are the stakes, right, for her for getting to Eden. So yeah,
you can almost put photo in the title of this exercise because that's like the number one touchstone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the
like
most
photo.
Common. Jamie just did a big Twitter thread on this and it blew up.
Yeah. I think of Independence Day with the photo
Yep.
of his kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And okay, make them suffer.
Yes, that's a
That's not a transition of
codification
anything.
I took from Bob. Bob changed make it harder to make them suffer, and I like that better.
I did?
So yes, you did on one of the
Awesome.
shows.
I'm glad Jimmy writes everything down because me and Jamie wouldn't remember anything.
I literally have to write everything down because I'll forget it the second.
Right.
So I didn't do a book report on this one. I feel like we can't do this episode without talking about this. And that is the nightmare fuel exercise. So speaking of amateur scripts that I'm reading a lot, one of the things that's common is that I'm reading scripts where like everything is just like way too easy. The character is just, everybody gets along, everything's great. There's a few very mild complications, and then the movie's over. And everything's pretty fucking pleasant.
It's the adaptation Orchid movie. It's nothing
when I'm reading scripts and like I'm like, this is like feels way too pleasant. It's a problem, right? Because as we've talked about, not even in comedies, the comedy hero is suffering, like emotionally. It sucks for them what they're going through.
Comedy is tragedy,
right? For them, yes,
right, yeah,
yes. The audience laughs with them, but their situation. So, I think that when you're coming up with ideas for what's going to happen in your story, one thing I challenge my clients who aren't making their characters suffer is to come up with a whiteboard just of ideas about this. What is the worst thing that could ever happen to your character? Make a list. And then even when you come up with a scene or a scenario or a goal, an agenda, what is the worst thing that could happen to them in that scenario? What is the worst thing that could happen to them on this path to wherever they're going next? At every turn, ask yourself, what is the worst thing that could happen here to my character? And that's the answer to what you're going to put them through. Because if you're doing that exercise, and we made this really long, my favorite one of this that's their nightmare fuel is John Wick's nightmare fuel. In the John Wick episode, if you like this idea, listen to the John Wick episode. We go through all of the John Wick's worst nightmares that happen one after the other. That's why it feels like when they get through all of these nightmarish scenarios, it feels like such a resonant journey.
Right.
Because you're watching your character at their worst, right? It forces you to put your character through hell and show us what they do when they're at their worst. And that reveals who they are. So I think this movie is an exercise in Logan's worst nightmares. I feel like even the limo, right from the start, like he's just like drunk in the back seat of his limo. He's trying to lay low. He don't want to do anything and to anyone.
I mean, his worst nightmare is already in that first shot without them even trying to steal the tire. His worst nightmare is still being alive.
He's alive.
Him being alive and pathetic is his worst nightmare, right?
Right.
It's like straight up frame one is his worst nightmare.
He can still heal, but he heals slowly.
Yeah,
if he's gonna die, it's gonna be really slowly.
Right.
And painfully.
Right.
So right from the start, like
less useful.
He's less useful. Oh my God. There's so many, like Xavier, the last person on Earth who he loves and cares about, is dying and barely remembers,
losing his mind. Right.
I mean, it's just
everyone he loves is dead.
Yeah, he's at the funeral. All he wants to do is lay low, put his head down, and do this job for this person. Someone shouts at him through the rain, "Logan!" Talk about a nightmare. God damn it. I'm just trying to hold an umbrella for this lady. I don't even want her to notice me, let alone some stranger asking me to be a hero.
It's unwanted fame. And also it's from his kind doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So he's only known by people who aren't like him.
Right.
And he's famous among them. And the people who are like him are gone.
Yeah.
That's a
Ugh.
worst nightmare right there.
That's the worst nightmare right there. And like all of the things like, and there's even a positive spin on these nightmares, right? Because like he doesn't want to like make meaningful human connection with other people. That's a nightmare because if he makes meaningful human connection, then there's something at stake. And every time in the story when he makes meaningful human connection, those people suffer and die. Just like he says, bad shit happens to people I care about. That's his nightmare in the movie. Just puts him through one scenario after another. Like he says to the doctor, it's one of my favorite moments. It's such a subtle moment. He's like, if you do yourself a favor, forget we were ever here. Like you seem like a nice guy. Like he doesn't want the guy to like care about him.
But when you have a character who is basically, I mean, for all intents and purposes, sort of suicidal, right? I mean, that's who Logan is at this point. Giving him meaning is kind of his worst nightmare because now he has to care. Especially, let's also keep putting back in there that he's 200 years old.
Yeah.
That adds to the fact that
it does.
I mean, this is a human mind that is ready to leave this earth, right? So badly.
Yes. And like you said, it feels earned. His death feels like a happy death. Like he earned it. It's time. You can rest.
It's
now.
time, man. Yeah, it's time to go.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that challenging yourself to make a list of all the worst things that can happen to your character in a way that's tonally and genre, appropriate. Like in a comedy, you don't want somebody to like get their arm chopped off. But you know what I mean? Like there's a bad version of this, but
real quick, you could do it for like Caliban's worst nightmare is being forced to hunt mutants again.
And we see his nightmare fuel. Yep.
One of Laura's worst nightmares is Professor X dying.
Yep. And we see that her experience.
You know what I mean?
They're all experiencing.
We were talking earlier how you can do the intensity for every character. You can do this for every character.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Great point. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's everything, guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to add or plug?
I guess I'll say so on, I'm selling myself more than I usually do on this episode.
Fine.
But I'm already November. It is August, the second week of August right now, and if you're looking for script notes, my November is already almost full. So I usually have like 3 months or more of a wait, and it's building up. So if you want to get on the calendar for 2025, hit me up.
Cool. Jamie, anything? What are you selling? What are you selling?
Just comic books. No, Last Night at Terrace Lanes is on Tubi now, so there's no excuse. People can go watch it with commercials. Go watch it and throw a review up there, wherever you throw reviews these days, I guess.
Jimmy, do you have any movies on Tubi?
I do, but I don't want to tell them.
Gotcha. I also have a movie on Tubi, but I don't want to talk about it. I won't plug it. But it's funny. I was wondering if all three of us had a movie on Tubi.
I do. I have a movie on Tubi.
Yeah.
I think
it's called Girl of Cthulhu. It's not for everyone.
I was like trying to think like I think VHS 2 might be up on there or something like that.
Oh, well then I have two things sort of.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's done. I feel like I've had things, they come and go so fast on Tubi. So I'm not
VHS
really
2 is on another big streaming service though. I forget which one I saw it the other day. Hulu maybe. Maybe it's Hulu.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Jamie always has things on Hulu and he's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, it's whatever, man.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's no big deal.
But when it comes to selling those issues.
Yeah, well, I don't get any money out of those.
Ninja Turtles.
Isn't that insane?
Number 2 is in the garage.
You might see more money from selling comic books than you would residuals from streaming clicks. That's insane.
I don't see any money from Tubi.
Dude, I just bought our first movie that's out of print on eBay from someone, and I had to talk them down. I did. I was like, I'm the filmmaker. The distributor never gave us copies of this, so I don't have a copy. Can you give this to me for cheaper? And they gave it to me for like $5 cheaper. It was like a really low moment.
God, that's insane. You should. That's a great tweet right there. I
don't have the energy for it now.
That's fine.
I used to tweet about how I would work at the mall, and then on my lunch break, I'd go to like Sam Goody or whatever it was in Suncoast and see my movies in there. And like that was like this strange paradox. Like, yeah, like these are making money for someone at Suncoast Video, but I'm working for minimum wage at the mall. And I'm going to look at my movies on lunch break. We're getting too heavy here. Talk about Logan.
Yeah, this is the Logan part of the.
I know I used to never buy physical media of any movies I worked on. I just didn't think it was right to spend $20 to buy,
People don't
Exist or
understand
something.
that, Jamie. They think you just get the movie
Well,
for free once you make it, but that's
but-
not the case.
Yeah, because nobody really cares at that point. You know what I mean? They're like the people
Especially
that would
now,
send it to
right?
you. Especially now. But even back then, it would be like at that point, the people that would send it to you, they probably would send it to you if you asked. You know what I mean? Like if I raised my hand and said, "Hey, would you send me a couple of those?" They probably would send them. But if you're not going to ask, they have other things to do besides, dump a bunch of, because if they send them to you, they probably have to send them to 20 other people too, and they just don't feel like doing it. So I never used to get them.
The number of times I've bought my own movies on Amazon and eBay because it was just the only way to get them.
A copy from the distributor.
Well, and I just always give them to somebody else. Like, I
Yeah.
usually get one. I don't even have all the movies that I've written and produced and put I don't even have them on my shelf.
Yeah, the worst thing about it is sometimes those old ones, like if it's something that's old and kind of out of print, if you go up online and look for it now, it'll be like $650 because there's none available. And it'll be like,
that's what I've had to talk our
Right.
no budget shitty first movie was on eBay for a ridiculous amount, and I was like, dude, can you give this to me for like way cheaper, please?
Wait, can I ask one thing before we wrap this up? When you tell the guy that you're one of the people that made the movie, was he even remotely starstruck, or was he
he
just
probably
like,
didn't
dude,
believe you.
No, but
Did he
what
give a
was so
shit?
funny
Did he give a
is-
shit?
No, he wrote me this heartfelt letter as if he was doing me a favor. He was like, I'm so glad it's going into the right hands, and just like all this was like, if you're so glad, why'd you charge me fucking $50 for it? You're glad you got $50 out of the person
It's
who
funny
spent
that he
years
doesn't-
of their life and all their hard-earned money bringing it to life. Yeah.
Him not realizing that is so patronizing and amazing. It's funny. It's straight up funny.
Anyway, I'm having a breakdown on here.
That's fine. That's your premise paint. That's your Logan
Yeah.
premise paint. Yeah. I think that's everything. Until next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, this is Bob Rose, and thank you for listening to Writers Blockbusters. If you'd like to financially support the show, please consider joining my Patreon. I've been producing the podcast for several years completely out of pocket, and I'd like to keep producing it ad-free and no longer at a loss. If you'd like to help, head on over to patreon.com/Bob Rose Sucks. That's right, Bob Rose Sucks. And if you want the one and only Jimmy George to help polish up that writing project you're kind of struggling with, head on over to scriptbutcher.com. As a listener, you already know he's the best there is, scriptbutcher.com. You can also support the show by simply sharing it or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate both. Thank you for listening, and see you next episode.